So it's Ladies' Day. All the girls are out in show in Liverpool, fake tan, betting, grade ones, graded races everywhere. And myself and Jamie Lynch couldn't be further away from the action.
Further away from the men, in some sort of locked room here at Timeform, well away from where it's at. But it doesn't prevent our opportunity from joining in. What we're going to do today is try and join in from afar and point people in the right direction.
But there's plenty of good things in Halifax.
Good things? You're not talking about women, are you?
Just talking about delights.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, straight into the first race, and it's a tricky looking grade 3 handicap hurdle, and we've got a 9-1 favourite in Thomas Campbell. Where would you stand in this?
Well, Thomas Campbell is Timeform top rated as well on the back of that Martin Pipe 5th, but watching that back, he probably should have finished 3rd, maybe he's even 2nd, and there is a case of saying that he would have been banged there had he not made a few sort of novice mistakes and some naivety involved in the finish as well. So it's easy to see why he's top in the market, even though it's a really competitive race. It's interesting his other one, rather be Nicky Henderson's other one, that was half the price of Thomas Campbell in the Martin Pipe. Only got as far as the 2nd, but it tells you something about their background that Ratherby was much more fancied going into that. The novice handle is quite an interesting one here, and I suppose that if I was going to head in a direction, it would be this Geordie Deschamps, who's a second string looking at it because it's owned by JP, and yet Barry Geraghty is carrying the first colours aboard Dreamberry. But Geordie Deschamps got a few things in his favour. Number one is that he's coming in fresh, and that's an angle that we sort of saw come in play yesterday, but we're going to talk about quite a lot today. It's the Cheltenham-Aintree relationship. And for horses who skip Cheltenham, it's sometimes no bad thing. And Geordie Deschamps, January the 14th was the last time we saw him. He was on a real roll starting his career, and then you look at the prices, it seems to have stalled, and it has stalled, but you look at the prices, he was 11-10 for a handicap at Newbury, where he finished 2nd. He's off a £6 higher marquee, but he's ridden by a claimer, and then he was 7-4 favourite in a race won by Willoughby Court, the Neptune winner at Warwick. Now that was really bad ground, he just was ill prepared for it, and it seemed as if at that stage of his career he'd put an awful lot of effort in, and that intensive start caught up with him. But he's been freshened up. This scenario, i.e. a big field handicap on good ground over 2.5 miles, seems perfect for him. And in a really open race, he's the one I've sort of sided towards as I've gone through them again and again.
So Geordie Deschamps in the first.
Yeah.
Yep. Nice one. So straight into the second race, a grade 1 novices hurdle. And you mentioned the relationship between Aintree and Cheltenham. We've got 3 very different stories here, with one that ran very well in the Supreme, one that missed it completely, and one that almost looked as if something was amiss. Yeah,
so we'll deal with Cheltenham first, and River Wild is the understandable favourite because of how well he ran to finish 3rd in the Supreme. But it just reminds me a little bit of Top Notch yesterday, and that Top Notch gave every ounce at Cheltenham, and that seemed to have an effect on him yesterday. And this fella, River Wild, again, everything he had, he put it on the table at Cheltenham to finish 3rd. And the other thing is that it's easy to draw comparisons between him and Bouverdere, who obviously is graduated to become the top hurdler this season. He was 3rd, Bouverdere, in the Supreme before winning this. But Bouverdere was rated £10 higher than River Wild is. So he's not the same horse as yet in terms of where he's at in his career. And it does bug me and it does worry me that he had such a hard race in finishing 3rd there. On the other hand, it's impossible, I think, to back Moonracer on the back of such a laboured and lifeless effort in the Champion Hurdle. Something was clearly up with him, but that fragility that has sort of permeated his career did seem to come to the table there. And he's one of those horses who everyone can tell afterwards exactly why it's won, but everyone can say why it's been beaten as well. So I couldn't back Moonracer because of that lifeless display at Cheltenham, and then because we've concentrated on Cheltenham, and back to the point you made, is bypassing Cheltenham the right move? And I think it is with this specific race and this specific horse, because Mount Muse for a long time has looked to have Aintree written all over him. He's got the tools, he's got the toe, he's got the talent, I think, to really shine in this environment. And you watch him, he's mopped up in the north. He's been beaten once, but they seem to learn a lot about how to ride him that day as well when he was overturned at Longwood's on at Wetherby, over 2.5 miles, and he's come out the other side a different horse. So on ratings, Nick, he's not far behind River Wild and Moonracer at all. 157p adjusted, River Wild and Moonracer mid 160, so he hasn't got that much ground to make up. He's coming in fresh, and obviously the stable and the owner do tend to to prime horses for this specific meeting. So Mount Muse makes all sorts of sense for me in this sort of race. He's my best bet of the day because I think A, he's the right horse for the race, and B, we're preying on the others at the top of the market. One who gave us everything at Cheltenham and one who bombed out.
So Mount Muse in the second, and straight into the third race, the Main Novices Chase, and it all revolves around one horse really. And you could ask a million questions about this horse, so I'm just going to jump straight in, and then maybe we can talk about him after. Is he a good thing? My bite.
No, it's never good. His record proves he's never a good thing. One thing we are is that we're in danger of treating him as a bit of a comedy character, which is unfair on him. But obviously it is respective and reflective of what he did at Cheltenham, which is one of the most amazing performances I've seen in a championship race, to do what he did and still win. We are in danger of overlooking the raw, beastly talent of this horse, because he's put in probably two of the single best performances by a novice this season, both at Kempton, where he fell when he had the race at his mercy and was well clear, and then obviously at Cheltenham. So he's like one of those... He's not like Lenny Henry in Broadchurch, because I can't take that seriously, but he's a bit like Robin Williams in that you see him as a comedy character, but in actual fact he's a really serious actor and a really serious horse. And the bottom line with this race is, Nick, if he's got his head on, nothing's going to live with him at any point. So it's how you play him and how you play this race. I love a play spot. I'll be doing one today, and I'll be setting up all my troops against Mike Bite, sort of thinking that he's still got his jumping issues at times, and obviously what he did at Cheltenham still fresh in the mind. But the bottom line is that he could just run away from these and not even anything get near him.
So what would Whisper need to do to turn it over? Is it literally a case of hoping for another calamity for Whisper to get involved?
Because when you think of Cheltenham, he was given the perfect ride by Davy Russell. He was in front after the last, and he still couldn't beat Mike Bite. So everything, it was a perfect storm for him at Cheltenham, and he still couldn't do it. So one thing in Whisper's favour is his reliability. Obviously, we know what we're going to get with him, whereas we're still a little bit, what's he going to do with Mike Bite? And number two is that he has a good record at this meeting, coming on from Cheltenham as well. He won the big hurdle race at this track a few years ago. So he's one who's been kept fresh for the spring and has a track record at reproducing his best at both Cheltenham and Aintree. Mike Bite, one of his big disappointments last year as well was when he won easily at Cheltenham, was turned out quickly. Won easily at Kempton and was turned out quickly at Cheltenham and didn't get the job done. So he's a bit of a flaky character, and this sort of environment and this turnaround might just play on his mind. So it's very hard for me to sit here and say he's a good bet or a bad bet. It's almost whatever float your boat, really, in terms of how you are a punters. But all you need to know is, from my perspective, I'll be lining up all my troops against him in that play spot.
So if you're going to do a play spot, take him on perhaps Mike Bite in the... It's a strange old
That's
one.
all I've got. Yeah,
it's a watching brief, really. I think
it's an impossible. We're here to try and predict, and he has been one of the most unpredictable horses in training. For that brain freeze he had at Kempton with the mixed message between him and Dal Jacob, but more to the point, what he did at Cheltenham. So what we try and do with Timeform, and what we try and do with these, is to try and predict what might happen using the evidence. But the evidence says, for Mike Bite, he can't really predict what he's going to do, because he blows hot and cold, but when he's hot, he's red hot and nothing can touch him.
Well, that's it. His Timeform rating was higher than Denman, wasn't it, when winning the RSA Chase, which is ludicrous.
Oh yeah, and look at the string out field and behind, and we sort of knew Whisper's class and his back class from hurdling before that. So just the bare result of the RSA this year shows him in a really good light, but then you've got to factor in and add in whatever you think he was extra for, and it's clearly plenty given what he did on the run-in and still managed to win.
So your guess is as good as
ours.
Exactly,
yeah.
So straight into race number 4, another Grade 1, the Melling Chase, and very interesting field here. A lot of these played significant parts at Cheltenham. Where do you stand when it comes to this?
This is like an amalgamation almost of the Champion Chase and the Ryanair Chase. It's sort of an intermediate trip, 2.5 miles, or 2 miles 300 yards. So it's sort of what you feel is the stronger piece of form at Cheltenham. And my impression, and Timeform's impression with the ratings as well, is that the Ryanair was a better piece of form than the Champion Chase. It was a Champion Chase that was without Douvan, and obviously suffered for that. But the question to ask, Nick, for everyone at home as well, is that, do you think Ern Dessert, if he was given the Champion Chase option, would have won that? I think so, absolutely so. So for Sub-Lieutenant, to run as well as he did against Earned the Cert in the Ryanair makes him, for me and for Timeform ratings, the best horse in here with the best form. And I'm just going to read out Sub-Lieutenant's Timeform ratings since he joined Henry de Bromhead at the start of the season. 154, 160, 164, 167, 168. So that tells you the story of where this horse is going and how Henry de Bromhead has got him just eking out more improvement every time he comes to the track. And because Earned the Cert was so brilliant and it was a breathtaking and bold and buccaneering display at Cheltenham, it drew your eye right through the race. And it was only when you go back and review it that you see the running that Sub-Lieutenant did from the last to make a 6-length gap into a 1.5 length gap, and you get the impression that had the race been over another 50, 100 yards, he might have been the winner. So Sub-Lieutenant, in form terms, is, I think, the horse to concentrate on here and your starting point in terms of your race. Loads of other factors to consider, though, obviously, Nick, in terms of the Cheltenham turnaround. The shape of the race is all important because Sub-Lieutenant likes to race prominently. We've got a few in here who also like to do that. So Brian Cooper is going to have to be cute on Sub-Lieutenant to not get drawn in with a battle with Royal Regatta, for example, but just to play his cards at the right time. But for me, Sub-Lieutenant is the one who's holding the big ace to put down at some stage of this race.
To quickly touch on the others, I mean, a lot of people, even in the Timeform office, thought that God's Own could really have come and won the championship if he hadn't taken half the fence with him in the latter stages. What would he need to do to take this race?
I think that's right, isn't it? That it wasn't just one mistake, it was two. 4 out, he clouted, managed to recover from that, and was just poised to challenge when he hit 2 out, and that was it, really game over for him, and faded into 5th. It's easy to see him winning this, isn't it? That's the bottom line. He won the race last year when Vertua departed, and everyone said, well, fluke. But actually, he beat Vertua at Bag of Punchestown the next day, albeit over 2 miles. And this is a horse with that proven spring form. We're on spring watch here, and God's Own is trained for the spring. He comes alive in the spring, and his track record at this specific meeting is second to none. Add in the fact that he was unlucky at Cheltenham, and yes, Sub-Lieutenant and God's Own, they, for me, are the big two at the head of the betting. We have talked about Fox Norton. Mm-hmm. I've just got a slight worry about him over 2.5 miles in that he hasn't tried it as yet. Most in his family, looking at them, were out and out 2 milers. There's an assumption and a presumption that he's going to be every bit as good over 2.5 as 2, but I'm not exactly buying into that yet. And especially when they're so tight at the top of the market, you sort of got to look for fault lines in a few of them. So the more you look at this race and the more you watch the Ryanair back, the more you think that this is Sub-Lieutenant. He's got the best form in the race.
Okay, so quite clearly Sub-Lieutenant the one to be with there. And on to one of the hardest races of the entire festival now, the Topham Chase. I mean, I had a look at this the other day, and it took me ages to even begin to unravel it, really.
Yeah.
Where would you start in a race like this around the national fences?
Well, the internet's quite a clever thing. And when you were on a site on the internet, not specialist sites, like sometimes you go on like late at night, but on specialist sites and on any site, it comes up a little list, doesn't it, of you might like this. It knows what you're doing now and says, well, actually, if you're good at this or you like this, you might like that as well. And when Go Conquer was going around at Cheltenham from the front, jumping like he did, travelling like he did, there was a little sign in my head almost that popped up and said, you might love the Topham Chase, because what he did at Cheltenham is transferable to the Topham. He's never been around the national fences before, but the way he's jumped this horse, he's going to relish it, never mind cope with it. And I just think that what he did at Cheltenham, it didn't just say Topham horse, it screamed Topham horse to me. So coming back in trip, I think that he is probably option 1 as far as this Topham is concerned, even though there are loads of options. Here's the other thing, Nick, when you look through it, you know, you saw how well he ran at Cheltenham. Everyone at home saw how well he ran. Normally, when you run really well at Cheltenham, in a handicap scenario and competitive environment like that, the handicapper nudges you up a little bit, doesn't he? He said, well, obviously you ran really well. He's £2 lower than when he won at Cheltenham. The handicappers watched Cheltenham and seen something different to me because he said, all right, you're not as good as I thought. I'm going to drop you £2. So that is really interesting and really positive and really generous as far as he's concerned. And the final thing with him, it might be a curse in that it's a warning sign, but it might just be a blessing in that it puts the finishing touches to him, is that first time tongue tie. He's got that on today to help with that finishing effort. So obviously we'll mention a few more, but for me, I think my main play in the race is definitely Go Conquer, all because of the impression he created at Cheltenham.
Well, there's a real shrewdie in the Timeform office actually mentioned it in the Timeform report as well, I think.
Yeah, that way. We don't believe in blowing trumpets around here, even though we do actually. But yeah, I did that report on that race, and as I was watching it, I was thinking, God, imagine this horse if he goes to the top. And sure enough, here he is. He's at the front of the market, but why wouldn't he be? With so much going for him.
So to touch on some of the other ones, I mean, Asda May won the Sefton in December. Is there anything else? Is he got a big chance at anything at a bigger price?
Well, the Sefton is to the Topham what the Beecher is to the Grand National. It's almost the autumn trial with one eye on this. Asda May won it, and he's here as you'd expect. But also Seafood was second and Henryville was third, and both those horses seem to have been campaigned with one eye on coming back to the national fences. Both make appeal in some direction, especially the Seafood. Richard Johnson hasn't got a ride at the national as yet, but he gets aboard this fella, and this fella took to the fences like a duck to water when he was second in the Sefton, and it seems to me like he's ready and primed to raise his game again. So I'm going to keep him on side. Another one I'm going to keep on side is, because he keeps going on about it upstairs, or jumps handicapper Phil. He doesn't talk that much, Phil, but when he does talk, he comes over and says, you need to look at this, you need to back this. And Bouvril is the horse who he has come over a few times and said keep a very close eye on him for the Topham. Asda May was a sort of tricky Nichols character who seemed to be on the wane a little bit, but the national fences revived him in the Sefton, and this fella's sort of in that boat. He has his quirks, but the national course can stimulate some horses, and his form and the way he ran at Cheltenham to finish third in the plate suggests that he is primed and ready for a big run. Interesting, Nick, finally on Bouvril, is that when he's come to this meeting in the past, he's been in grade ones, because that's the direction that Paul Nichols thought he was headed with him. And he's sort of changed tack this year, become a handicapper, but he's still got that back class, and then, he might take to this race really well. So, in sort of summary, the Sefton is a really important race for this, and especially Seafood and Henryville. You can see them being prominent in this race. Bouvril is the newcomer to the national fences who could well take to them, but Go Conquer is another newcomer to the national fences who I am convinced will absolutely love around here.
Superb. So straight into the Sefton Novices Hurdle, the penultimate race of the day, and at the top of the market is the World's End, who really seem to be coming in with a big challenge at Cheltenham before departing 2 out. Do you think that could have taken a bit out of him, or is he the rightful favourite?
No, that's a good point to make, and especially with this race. Now, we don't really believe in raw stats at Cheltenham, as in trends and favourites and so on, but with this specific race, there's only one favourite in the last 10 has won the Sefton, and there's been SPs of 33, 25, 20, 16 amongst the winners. So that tells you a tale of the race and of the division as well, because we're dealing in young stays, and when a lot of these horses have gone to Cheltenham, overstaying trips and given their all, I find it very hard to reproduce it at Aintree, and that's why we get lopsided results. So I would always treat this race with a pinch of salt and some caution, and that goes for Constantine Bay, who was fourth in the Albert Bartlett, but as you said, the key horse is probably the Wells End, who couldn't contest the finish because he fell 2 out, but at the time looked really threatening, and he is a really promising horse. But with this race generally, I'd always look more toward the bottom of the market than the top of the market in sort of predicting or hoping for a result, because history tells us, recent history, that that's really the way to approach this race because of the stage of the season we're at and the division we're in. And at Cheltenham, there was a horse called Tin Soldier of Willie Mullins in the Coral Cup, and he was quite an interesting horse. He was a young horse, and he was about 16-1 the day before, and you can understand why. And I was at Cheltenham that day, and I was just walking along the bookies trying to determine which bookie was going to get my losing bet for that particular Coral Cup, or several losing bets. And this Tin Soldier was going like 10, 9, 8, 7, and he ended up being 5-1 favourite. He ran really well to finish 8th. And the reason we're concentrating on him is because Moulin Avant, number 9 on the card, finished second at Tin Soldier the time before at Thurles. And it seemed a bit underwhelming at the time because I really harboured high hopes for this Moulin Avant for Noel Mead. But in retrospect, and given what happened at Cheltenham and the sort of support behind Tin Soldier, it makes you think that actually Moulin Avant ran really well to finish second to him that day, beaten just a length. And he's a horse who, 2 crucial factors: he's been kept fresh since then, so that was in February. He comes in fresh, and 2 is that this horse is always shaped like a trip, is what he wants, and he gets that here. So It's a hard one to talk about from a ratings perspective, because I do believe in this case that you've got to take trends seriously and note that Cheltenham horses seem to struggle when it comes to reproducing it. We're dealing in young horses and staying horses. So Moulin Avant is the sort of one I've come round to, and the one I've put up as a long shot selection. He's about 12-14 to 1, I think.
So would that be an each way poke?
Yeah, that's a good one. Poke.
A poke.
Each way poke, yeah. Yeah.
Great stuff. So one race left on the card, and it's a bumper, a Grade 2 bumper, but as we know, bumpers have been going a long time now this season. We've seen a lot of horses in these races, and come towards Aintree, is it wiser to look at one for experience, or one maybe more unexposed, or just take it as it comes, really?
Yeah, well, it's almost the same with any bumper, isn't it, of how you approach it. Do you go for the winning form and the proven form and those who achieve the most, or because we're really dealing in the bottom of the deck with these embryonic horses, do you look for the higher promise? So who's the favourite for this race, Nick?
Black Op at 7-2.
And who's the second favourite? Because it is tied in.
You're not going to ask me how to pronounce this horse, are you?
It's funny, they're coming down here, but we were talking now and saying, what the hell do you call it, number 5? Claimant Taking Forgan.
Is that what you're going to go for? I mean, I didn't even know. I thought it was because some of them I really can't read them. Like even things like number 6 Valverde, I'll sort of say like.
But sometimes they're like a phrase, aren't they, just mixed up, or certain words. But this just seems to be a collection of letters. He is the key horse in this race for 2 reasons. Number 1 is that he's got the best form because he was 3rd in the champion bumper at Cheltenham, running really well. But the main point with him is at the time before he finished 3rd in the champion bumper, he ran at Doncaster and he was beaten by this Black Op. Black Op beat him all ends up. Yes, he was receiving weight, £7 because Claimant for tackle had already won a race. But Black Op, he just looked the class act in that race. They cost $210,000 to get him on the Brookhouse team because he won a point impressively. But what he did at Doncaster told us that yes, he was worth the money, and yes, he is an exceptional bumper horse in the making. So it sounds boring, but there are 2 lines of form here that send you towards Black Op, and he almost ticks both boxes. The proven form, because it's been boosted by Claimant for tackle for taking it, and also the potential because he's had just 1 run and he looked a class act when he won at Doncaster.
Smashing. So just before we wrap up, I asked Dan yesterday, I'm going to have to ask you as well. It's the Grand National tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very quickly, if you had to throw a couple of darts right now, what's catching your eye?
I like Black Lion a lot. It's just that good feeling that he's going to take to the fence as well, and I cannot believe that Nigel Twiston-Davies sat on his hands with him through Cheltenham. I think he did that because he knew that this horse had 1 year and 1 shot at winning a Grand National, and this is it. So Black Lion for me. And Ocello Conti's the one who was 6th last year, 6th.
I think so, yeah.
He clouted at least 1 fence and did really well to recover the ground at that point. And I think that his form is a higher standard this season. And obviously he's trained by the Master Gordonelli, who's probably had 1 eye on this ever since the horse finished 6th last year. So Black Lion and Ocello Conti are my 2 against the field.
Smashing. Well, thank you very much anyway.
Thanks, Nick.
Happy punting.